Today we are here with Kathy Brisbane Wesley. Kathy is the great niece of two of the deaconesses that were here at Grace House, Gertrude Brisbane and Grace Brisbane, who served here from September the 10th of 1944 to September of 1946.
So they had just completed the Chicago training school for deaconesses at the point that they were assigned, or they took a call to come to Grace House, and they knew they were coming for a 2-year commitment. And while they were here, what we have from their notes is that they were working with Sunday school and Christian education kind of classes, but then also helping and serving whatever needs people had in the community at that time. And they stayed here on the grounds of Grace House, but they were up and down the mountain and serving in a number of different parts of the area, from what we understand. After they left Grace House, they were never ordained as a deacon like we do nowadays. We ordain deacons, but they've completed the deaconess school and then used that training in ministry to go on and do other kinds of ministry, predominantly with Christian education. And they would teach religious education in the schools. They did. Gertrude was in St. Augustine, Florida at one point, and up in Falls Church, Virginia. I remember hearing them talk about being in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So they served in just a number of different places, but our family home is in Michigan. When religious education was no longer being taught in the schools anymore, what happened is they went into public school teaching. So they were already in the public schools. They just became classroom teachers. And the year that Aunt Gertrude retired from public school teaching is the year that I started teaching music in the public schools, when that was in 1980. And then Grace retired a few years after that. And they had taken separate calls, so they didn't always answer a call to ministry together. So they went different places away from each other. But at the, after they both retired, then they had a place together in Blackstone, Virginia.
Okay.
Before going back to Michigan. My dad, Paul Brisbane, is an Episcopal priest, and in his retirement, he's done a lot of work with our family's genealogy. 4 branches, the Brisbane family being one of them. And he has also inherited a lot of papers and pictures from his dad, who is Gertrude and Grace's brother, from Gertrude and Grace upon their death. So he has a lot of their documents and pictures from different things that they did in their lives. And in putting that together, I've helped him out with the genealogy portion of it and going through some of the pictures and stuff. And I saw in the list of places where Gertrude and Grace had been that they had served here on at Grace House. And so as we were looking through this a couple of years ago, I looked up where is that on the map? How close is that to me? Because I'm in Southern Maryland, and is it, a reasonable distance for me to drive down and see what it would be like? And so I contacted you here, and we were making a trip halfway across the country around Thanksgiving time, and we decided to go the southern route and come by here, and you were gracious enough to let us kind of come in at last minute, the day before Thanksgiving, and gave us a wonderful tour of the facility here and the history and everything. In thinking about it after having left here, I thought their ministry was to serve the people here, and the people still have needs. And so I wanted to go back and continue their legacy. And it's a legacy that's not just Gertrude and Grace's legacy, but their brother, my grandfather, Bill Brisbane. It was part of his legacy to minister to people in need, and that was my dad's ministry his whole life. And I can see that being passed on to my sisters, my brother, and hopefully we've set a good enough example that our children will continue that legacy when we're long gone. But, we've tried to communicate what our family members have done for other people, and that they find a way to do that as well. One of the things that I always found most striking about what Gertrude and Grace, and my grandfather too, in the ministry that they did, they were doing it out of humility. They didn't need to have a lot of people know what they were doing.
Right.
And we found out, my sisters go to the church that's then the family church, and they've heard from people the good things that my grandfather did for different people in that congregation, and nobody knew that at the time, but they're having a chance to hear about the things that he did. And it's like, he was never one to make a big deal about what he did, and Gertrude and Grace didn't make a big deal about their ministry. It was just, they were doing what God called them to do, and how can you say no?
Right.
So when I wanted to come back here, it's like, I don't know much about building things. I don't know much about working with tools. I'm ashamed to say, because my dad and my grandfather were wonderful craftsmen, and I don't have those skills. But hey, I got two hands, and I'll do whatever somebody asks me to do. So, and that's one of the things that I think has been most rewarding about this, is because I can continue their work in serving the needs of the people in the community, but it might not be in the same way that they did, but it's just the little bit that I have to offer.
Right. Still reaching out and helping our neighbors.
Right.
Our motto is working with, not doing for. Offering labor to our neighbors. So even though Gertrude and Grace may not have went out and built decks and wheelchair ramps, to me, you're still continuing their legacy, and it's an heritage that is far beyond what any of us can imagine. Your first year was 2019?
Yeah.
Kathy has been here this week, and she has helped build handrails on a wheelchair ramp for an elderly cancer patient, and then left that project and went to restore a deck for another elderly individual who is on oxygen. So the work continues. The ministry that her aunts were a part of here over 50 some years ago, 60 years ago, still continues today.
I'm sure when Gertrude and Grace came here, they didn't know people, and so it was a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I came here the first summer. We'd met once. Didn't know what I'd be doing, didn't know the people that I'd be working with. It was a leap of faith.
Yeah.
But we were all in God's hands.
That's
through
right.
Through it all, yeah.
And a lot of people ask, how do you know what projects to do? How do you know who to assign the projects to? And that is my answer. Faith. You've just got to have faith that God's going to lead you in each direction. Who needs to come, what project needs to be done first, and all that. So
yeah,
it is a ministry of faith.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy, thank you for doing this interview with us. We're sharing a picture of Grace and Gertrude. Hope you all enjoy the video.